Last week we talked a little bit about doing compassionate things, doing good things in the world. How many people here, don't worry, I won't call on you. Just raise your hand, don't worry, it's an innocuous question. How many people submitted things that they did? Oh, this is great. That's great. About 8 or so? That's fantastic. That's fantastic. That's 8 more people than have ever submitted before. Pretty good. Big improvement. That was exciting. I think of a community like this as serving many uses to the people in it. It's been said recently, I don't know if any of you have heard, but a few people, I've heard 2 people, which is a lot, say that they've seen wolves in Vermont recently. Have other people heard these? Yeah, it's hard to believe. Yeah. You saw one, or you? Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Not coyotes. I'm not referring to coyotes. I'm referring to wolves. It's been said that there's some wolves about, so I've spent some time directing my compassion towards the wolves. Please don't shoot them if you see them. There are people who would like to shoot them if they see them. Please don't be one of those people. Wolves are wonderful creatures. They're very cute. So don't kill them. If we have them around, then we should be careful of them. But the reason I bring it up is that you know what they say about wolves. They say the strength of the wolf is the pack. Yes, and the strength of the pack is the wolf. So here we are, we're a pack. Our pack. And our strength is each other. Our strength is ourselves, of course, but our strength is also each other. And so there are many different purposes that we can serve for each other. One of them, of course, is to directly give compassion to each other. It's wonderful to have a place where we can go at least once a week and feel confident that we'll get at least a little bit of some small shot of compassion, maybe even a big shot of compassion. Get a hit of it, and knock us off balance a little bit. That's something that we can do here. It's really nice to have something that can, as I say, knock us off balance. Any of you ever gotten knocked off balance by love before? Not so bad. Yeah, it's not so bad. It's worthwhile experience. So to come to a place like this and get a little bit of that is really good, especially if it's real. That's even better. That really shakes up our lives. So that's one of the things that we can do here. And there are many things we can do here. We can support each other's concentration and support each other's practice and technique. One of the things we can do is also support each other in directing our love to those in our lives, directing compassion to those around us. Those may be people we are close to, maybe people we're not close to, maybe people we like, maybe people we don't like, maybe people we know, and may actually be people we don't know. In fact, it may not even be people. It may be wolves, or birds, or trees, or the earth, all living things. Ourselves could be any number of things. It's useful to get some support from other people in expressing our compassion, our love. And so last week we came up with a rudimentary method for supporting that, which is a way to share. Daniel, thank you. Set up way that we could share on Facebook what we've done, what actions we've taken to make the world a better place. It's really very exciting. And this sort of a community is, let's face it, the sort of community that's changed the world more times than we can count. It's exactly this kind of community that's changed the world again and again. So why wouldn't we do that? Why not? Why not? It seems like we're probably going to, actually. So let's do it. Let's get started. Let's have a good time changing the world. And the way that we can do that is by supporting each other in doing that. Something that some of you have probably noticed, I've heard from a number of people over the past few months, especially over the past month or so, you've noticed that I've more and more been emphasizing this compassionate action aspect of the practice. I think David's point was brilliantly put. We begin by paying attention to how we see, paying attention to how we perceive. What is the essence that we perceive? We start with that. We start with cultivating the essence that we perceive. I didn't have a chance to write in the book yet, but there was a point when I was asked to write this on a T-shirt. Making T-shirts, and you designed a T-shirt. It was very fun. So I designed a T-shirt, and I wrote on a T-shirt, what is compassion? And the thing that I wrote was, perception is the basis of action. Perception is the basis of action. That was on the front or back or something. Perception is the basis of action. This is very important to perceive, to see. Then we'll take action. If you don't see this, then you won't take action according to it. And that's Exhibit A for the truth that perception is the basis of action. It's very important to perceive things clearly in order to take some kind of clear action. This is very important. If we perceive things in an unclear way, we take unclear action. Our actions are based on our perceptions. Interestingly enough, there's a lot of scientific evidence for what I just said. As obvious as what I just said may seem, there are scientists who dedicate their entire careers to studying this. Isn't that interesting? It's just amazing. There's a TED Talk on this called, I think it's called something like movement chauvinism, something like that. It's worth looking at. So the idea is, what's the point of a brain? What's the point of having a brain? The point is movement. The reason you have a brain is so that you can move. Things that don't move don't have brains. Things that move have brains. You have a brain so that you can do stuff. That's the point of having a brain. And a brain spends a lot of it. A brain has the nervous system has two aspects. It has its sensory aspect and its motor aspect. And the sensory aspect comes in and the motor aspect goes out. And the sensory aspect informs the motor aspect. So it's very important for us to know that our motor side of our lives, our action, what we do, how we impact the world around us, is based upon our perception. And so it's important for us to spend time clarifying our perception and understanding that the way we behave is based on our perception. How we perceive is the basis of how we behave. So in the front or the back or the top, maybe the bottom of the T-shirt, I wrote, perception is the basis of action. And then in whatever space was left, I don't remember where it was on the T-shirt, whatever space was left, I wrote in big, big letters, see each other. That's what I wrote. Because perception is the basis of action. So we have to see each other. If we see each other, then that's compassion, that's love. If we see enough, if we can actually see each other, then it's very difficult to behave in any other way than compassionate. It's difficult. You can try this. Try to really see someone and then see if you can treat them in a bad way. You might want to warn them beforehand that you're doing an experiment. uh, in case you succeed. So you want to maybe tell them beforehand, but that's okay. Then they have the perception so that they'll understand the behavior that would be appropriate. So you tell them, I'm going to really see you and then try to treat you badly. And just experiment. Find out if you can. I find it's very difficult. If I can maintain a constant awareness of seeing the person in front of me more and more carefully, and that doesn't actually, carefully is an important word, is a very interesting word, isn't it? Carefully. So you're filled with care. That's kind of a funny word. So you see them carefully. In the beginning, that just means accurately. You're trying to really see the person in front of you. You don't try to see them as wonderful or beautiful or worthy of your compassion at all. I find it's really helpful to not start off that way. It's helpful to just see them exactly as they are. Really, really see them. And try to expand my own capacity for seeing them in that way. And then I find again, it turns into the other kind of carefully. It's filled with care. I care about them then. Without any seam between the two kinds of carefully. See what I mean by no seam? There's no division between them. One is already the other. So we spend time developing our perception of the essence of each other. And ourselves can be one of the people who we perceive in that way, who we carefully perceive. Once that is developed enough, then there begins to be a sense that something could be done. I could do something to have an impact, to be positive in some way. In a community like this, we start off together. Here we are together, and we practice seeing each other, really seeing each other. And when other people see us, it's much easier for us to see ourselves. It's like they give us permission to see ourselves. You know, when you really look at someone, you kind of give them, you say, oh, you're interesting. It would be okay if you looked too at you. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm doing it. It's not bad. So you give the person an invitation to see themselves. We see each other, ourselves as part of each other, and come to the point when we notice that there is a fabric of care, a fabric of compassion. Having come to that point, we then support each other. We can support each other. We support each other in taking action, and actually taking action. And that's what last week's exercise is for, that, 10 people or so, I suppose. Because I'm sure some people who aren't here also did, so 10, 15 people or something like that, participated in it over the past, I guess it's been 2 weeks, hasn't it? Because I wasn't here. That's why I don't remember the past week. I was wondering why I couldn't remember it. I've been away on retreat for the past week. So something happened over the past week around here, and we did something with the Facebook page where we're sharing. So when we share, then we can support each other. Shinzen, who's a teacher in the area who I respect a great deal and who's impacted the way that I teach quite a bit, he likes to say, if you can't be disciplined, be clever. And this, I think, is very helpful. If you can't be disciplined, be clever. And his number one example of how to do this is that a lot of the time we have difficulty having the discipline to maintain a practice. We find that it's hard to have that discipline. I should say, maybe I'll say that later. Try to remind me to say that later. Okay? I'll remember if you remind me. What we do is we have the desire to practice. Maybe we want to practice for 10 minutes a day, half an hour a day, something like that. We want to practice. But then we find a week later, that's too bad. On Monday, I actually did the practice. On Tuesday, kind of shorter on Wednesday. And Thursday, I completely missed it. On Friday, I tried to do it a little bit, but that actually didn't go so well. And Da, 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 da. So we find the discipline side didn't work very well. Or maybe we want to go to retreats. We want to go to residential retreats on a regular basis. But we always seem to be too busy. We're just busy again and again, week after week. And a month, a year goes by. Okay, so what do we do since the discipline isn't working? How do we deal with the situation? We be clever. What does clever mean? Clever basically means... So the practice is designed to free us from slavery to our egos so that neither our perceptions nor our behaviors are entirely ruled by our egos. That's one of the main points of this practice. So that we don't see everything in terms of mine, not mine, me, not me, good, not good, gain, not gain. We stop perceiving everything in that way, and then we stop behaving in that way. We behave in a more compassionate way, in this singularity way, maybe you could say. I don't know if I'm using that expression correctly, but that would be the way I understand that expression. We see things as in a more connected or integrated way, and so we find ourselves behaving that way, and we celebrate that. That's one of the points of the practice. But in the beginning of the practice, we are not in that state. You see? Otherwise, we wouldn't be practicing. So that we're practicing is an indication that we're in a state of, to some extent, subservience to and even slavery to our egos, our sense of well, my my expression, don't take this too hard, is our self-searching, self-serving, self-conscious, self-righteous self-pity. That's a state that a lot of us spend time in. So there we are in our self, I guess it's self-seeking, right? Self-seeking, self-serving, self-conscious, self-righteous, self-pity. There we are in that state, kind of wandering around in it, in the quagmire, sinking deeper into the quicksand. And we want to get out, but we're not getting out. Here we are deeper into the ego. What do? Well, we need to be clever. And the way we're clever is that we trick our ego. We use our ego as a resource. That's what we do. That's how this path works. So how do you do that? That's what you do. You go around and you say, you know what? I have started a practice. And it's amazing that I'm so good at it. I sit every morning for a half an hour. That's what I do. I sit every morning for half an hour. Isn't that amazing? It is amazing. Yes, that's right. Because I'm amazing because I do that. And you just tell everyone about it. And by the way, I'm going to a week-long retreat later this year. It's in November. Second week in November. I'm going. I am going. That's what I'm going to do. And then, if you don't do that, then your ego feels injured. So your ego is stuck between a rock and a hard place. You either practice and your ego is injured, or you don't practice and your ego is injured. So you win. It's perfect. So this community that we're in, we can do this all the time with each other. We say, nice to see you this week. I'm going to be here next week. I hope to see you. And then Sunday comes around, and, oh, right, I told them I'd be there. What am I going to do? I'm pretty busy. I'm pretty busy, but I guess I'll just not do this thing that I don't want to do anyway, and just go. Because mostly those are the things that we're busy doing. We're doing the things that we don't really want to do. It's actually funny. A lot of times people say they don't have time to sit. Well, all you really need to do is you practice for 10 minutes a day or so. And so the recommendation I usually give is to find 10 minutes of stuff that you don't like to do and that you don't really believe in, and don't do that. And there you've got your time that you can use to sit in. So we can talk to each other about that, and we can set ourselves up so that our egos will be in the service of the transcendence of our egos. We set it up that way. And a community like this is, to my knowledge, the most useful resource for doing that. It is the single most useful resource. I got it. Thanks. So a lot of the time I hear people say, I have difficulty practicing, I have difficulty maintaining a consistent practice. And it's something that I sympathize. Sympathize means that you don't have the experience, right? You said empathy. Which is it? Yeah. Sympathy means I don't know what you're talking about, but I try to understand anyway. Yeah. Right? Okay, so I sympathized with people who say that they have difficulty maintaining a practice, but I have never had that experience. I've never had the experience of wanting to practice more than I practice. I've always practiced at least as much as I want to practice, usually much more. Why? Simple, because the first, quote, retreat that I ever did was in a Zen monastery in Japan. So when I started practicing, I just gave up on the idea that I was going to be able to pull this off on my own. I didn't even try it. I didn't even start that. I knew it wasn't going to go well. So I just, right away, I was 19. I want to practice. There's only one thing to do. Drop out of college, go to Japan. Go to the strictest system that I could find in terms of how much practice you're going to do. And I spent the first 5 years, I never wanted to practice. I only wanted to not practice. But I was practicing all the time because that's the schedule. You're just going to sit there for 12 hours. By hour 8, you're going to start paying attention to your breath a little bit just because everything else has gotten so boring. It's just, you can think about stuff for a while, but it's 5 in the afternoon and you've been sitting since 4 that morning. So that's more than 8 hours. And it's not that interesting anymore to gripe about something that someone said to you last year in Vermont. And what you should have said back. It's sort of interesting at 5 and 6 in the morning, but the morning rolls on and you've already improved your comeback 15, 20 times. And now it's late afternoon. And it's time to, wait a second. They told me I should be following my breath. How bad could it be? So you start that and you get going. So we're in a place like this. And of course, it's only a short time. It's just an hour. But even that time, here there's guidance, of course. There in Japan, there's nothing. You just have to sit there. But here there's guidance, and so you get a little bit of encouragement from at least this part of the community to maintain a practice. And so you maintain the practice, maintain the practice, a little bit, and it goes on. And then you can make use of your relationships to improve your practice each day. You can then make use of the relationships to come back the next week so that it's consistent. Once you have that consistent rhythm, then the perception of essence begins to deepen and stabilize and become more rich, more textured. It becomes textured. It becomes fascinating. You have no idea what you're experiencing anymore. You thought you knew what essence was, and then it turns out you have no idea what essence is. And that can be, at first it's maybe a little discombobulating, a little confusing, but then it becomes fascinating. You get into it, and the community is just rolling along, and you're rolling along with it. And you know that you're beginning to have traction. You're beginning to make direct contact with the quality the limitations, the expansion, the contraction of your perception beginning to connect and connect and connect. And as that happens, then a spirit of love and service, as Shinzen says, or compassion, a sense of compassion begins to emerge. And then from that place, that's why I was saying go directly from the body sensation to the thought of compassion. Make it direct. That from that place directly there's a sense of desire to be of service. That's completely different from the desire to be of service coming from shame or self-hatred or anger or desperation or whatever it is. It's totally different experience. It's an energizing and simple and clear, and the intelligence of it comes both from within and without. So it's an intelligent movement. You have that intelligent movement turns into action, and the people around you could hold you accountable. Because basically the theme, if I could be so blunt, the basic theme of meditation in the West is good news. It's not that hard if you just remove your life from the practice. And it's actually pretty easy. You're going to make really quick progress in your meditation as long as it's disconnected from the rest of your life. There have been a lot of movements in that direction. We're going to make this into something that doesn't include your life. This has to include our lives. And does that mean that progress is going to be slower? Well, yeah, of course. Much slower. Much, 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 much slower. But that's great. That's something to celebrate. And in a community like this, we can celebrate it because we can see how, as a community, we're holding each other accountable to maintaining everything. Because it's easier to move something small than to move something huge, like the Earth. So this is relatively easy to move. And then, I moved the Earth just now a little bit. But it wasn't as much, and it may not even have been perceptible, but it did happen. And so in a community like this, we start to gain confidence in it. So why is it, you might ask, that I so consistently and so much emphasize the importance of bringing our practice to a point of compassionate action? The reason is that if there's anything that I hear that people come here for, it is happiness. And there's a kind of happiness that only comes from concrete, useful, compassionate action. There is a kind of happiness that doesn't come from anything other than that, and it's a very powerful kind of happiness. It's a kind of happiness that changes our sense of who we are and what people are. It's a kind of happiness that changes our sense of who we are and what human beings are. And when we have that kind of happiness, then we gain the faith, the confidence that is needed in order to let go completely. And when we let go completely, then we can be truly open to our, you could say, purpose, to our goal, our commitment, our vow in life. And when we live out that vow, then that's of service not only to ourselves, although certainly to ourselves, but also to all living things. And so by talking about compassionate action, I am beginning with providing this community with a kind of happiness that is unique to the experience of compassionate action and is very important in the path that leads to service to all living things. And service to all living things is my ultimate commitment, the ultimate purpose of everything that I do, including leading this group. So that's the reason. That's the reason that I'm emphasizing it so much. And please look out for that happiness. Please be careful to notice it and give it space in your attention. When you do things that are useful to yourself and others, notice that happiness. Give yourself some time to feel it, because it may be a kind of happiness that is textured and rich and subtle and needs time to digest and integrate into our sense of who we are. So thank you for being here together and forming this community and being of direct and concrete service to the world.